Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, Driving Sales with Google Analytics. If you're inside the Fuse and if you have any questions about the process, or if you have any questions during the presentation or have any technical difficulties, just let us know. I'm excited to present today about driving sales with Google Analytics. We have amazing content prepared for you. And the goal really of today's webinar is to think about how we can use data and how we can use powerful platforms such as Google Analytics to enhance our reporting and to drive sales. I'm excited to be joined today by Neil Hoyne, Head of Customer Analytics at Google. Neil and I have done a couple of these types of webinars in the past. In fact, our past program was on data integration, and you can actually download the slides. Our content today is built on that content as we're going to talk about analytics today. Neil, how's everything going on your side?
Everything's going wonderful, Michael. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. Please, at any point, ask us questions. You can ask questions in the chat panel, or you can also tweet at us, at Neil and myself. We are monitoring Twitter handle. Now, if asking Neil a question and getting his brilliant perspective on challenges that you have with analytics is not enough of an incentive by itself, we also have a couple of gift cards for you prepared, and we're going to give out one gift card to one person who raises a great question, challenging question. And we have also a book by Brian Clifton that we're also going to be giving away to the person who raises another great question. And please, if you have any challenging questions, direct all of them to Neil. So as we were putting together this presentation, we thought about what role does data play in our lives today? Every day, I particularly hear concepts of big data, small data, how much data is enough. And that's really what we want to discuss today. And I couldn't help myself but share this cartoon as we are thinking through about analytics. And it sounds quite funny, right? That in this day and age, when everyone is talking about analytics, that companies rely on gut feel. And until I saw statistics, I couldn't believe that this was the case. But then I stumbled upon this type of research from a marketing Sherpa. And reading this, I thought I was reading Onion. I could not believe this was an actual publication. This was a marketing research. But as you can see, a marketing Sherpa did a study just 2 years ago. I don't think much has changed since then. And organizations or executives are still making decisions based on gut instinct. A lot of them are looking at historical spending, which is great. Some organizations are spending more on testing, and that's certainly that going to touch on a little bit today. But again, why in this day and age are so many organizations relying on gut instinct, especially when we have such amazing tools like Google Analytics that are free, available to help us? So what is the agenda today? We're going to talk about really two specific topics. One is we're going to cover what is so enhanced in the enhanced e-commerce. So many of you who follow Google News or Google Analytics News know that maybe about a year ago, Google released a number of major updates to Google Analytics, predominantly around e-commerce analytics. And so today we're really going to touch on what is so enhanced in that enhanced e-commerce. And Neil is going to take us through how new reports can help us identify sales drivers and insights. Neil is also going to share with us how we can understand our checkout process better and have a more visibility into why people start the checkout process and then maybe do not complete it, or what products, for whatever reason, are being abandoned in the cart. And then I will talk a little bit more about online and offline integration, probably the question that we are being asked most often: how do we really tie what's taking place online with what's taking place offline, or how do we tie information between our website and our call center, between in-store experience? And working with really dozens of retailers, helping them answer those questions, we have a number of very interesting use cases for how this can be accomplished. And the next section of this presentation, we're going to talk about implementation and answering common objections. Uh, very often when we present enhanced e-commerce, or when companies come to us and they say, we want this, we really love the reporting that's going to be available to us, but we cannot overcome some of the internal objections or some of the challenges. And so we've put together a couple of sets of objections or challenges that we hear most often, and we brainstormed for how we can help you overcome them. And that's the second part of the presentation. So let's dive in. What is enhanced in enhanced e-commerce? And the first, let's talk about business insights and sales drivers. So in this section, we'll talk about how Google Analytics can help us understand what promotions or what on-site marketing campaigns are actually driving sales. It can help us identify maybe what product attributes, such as the cover or the size of the shirt, are converting better. It can help us decide what products to feature on the home page or on other pages of the website. So let me turn this over to Neil to talk a little bit more about what's new, again, in enhanced e-commerce and how it can help with these questions.
Thank you, Michael. Now, with these reports, we're aware that there's a lot of different insights and metrics that you can find within Google Analytics. So, for instance, we know there's over 100,000 different reports that you can look at for insights in your business. And the way we wanted to highlight these new features were specifically to look at your current reports and the metrics they're showing, and then some of the new insights that you can derive with this enhanced e-commerce feature. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the top-line metrics that have been available for several years inside Google Analytics that are insightful to give you ideas as to how your individual products are performing and how much you're actually selling. Now, we wanted to go a little bit further with that by going deeper into saying, well, what can you actually do with some of these metrics to look at individual campaign performance? Can you actually look at internal promotions? So if you were to promote a specific block of products on your site through a different area of your site to encourage upselling or cross-selling, how are those internal promotions actually impacting your business? If you were to look at individual coupon codes, can you look at how those coupon codes change your overall basket size or how they drive sales for individual products? Or there's also a question around affiliate traffic. Instead of just receiving aggregate reports from an affiliate partner about how many sales they were involved with, or looking at traditional referral reports about how they're driving people through the funnel, can you actually look at those affiliate orders side by side with your regular e-commerce purchases to understand exactly how many products they were driving and what people were buying? And that's what you see from these overview reports. It gives you a very quick dashboard by which you can go through to look at these pivotal metrics to say, how are these actually driving my business and how are they impacting my overall sales? Now that's a starting report, but of course we didn't stop there because we wanted to get really deeper into the way that our advertisers and our customers look at individual products. And it's usually not just by the products themselves. Oftentimes they like to group them into categories such as best sellers or things that they were advertising through, say, a catalog. What about things that you were actively advertising through display ads? And that's where the product list functionality comes in, is that instead of looking at all products along a single list and saying, here's everything that we sell, what if we could take this information and group it into ways that make more sense for you? And then from those product lists, being able to give you additional metrics to say, well, how many people were actually looking at these categories as a whole? How often were people interacting with it? How often were people adding products from these categories to a shopping cart? And then how often were they driving to an actual purchase? So therefore, you get a little bit more understanding as to how products are performing at an aggregate level instead of groups. Now let's go just one step further in there to say, well, what exactly are these product data categories built off of? Well, the first thing you can do is that you can actually upload individual information about your product catalog. So instead of just taking the product name, you may want to upload something about the category, the brand, the size, the color, when it was ordered, who manufactured it. That type of depth can now be brought in. Then, of course, you get those individual product lists that we just discussed, such as the best sellers and the more related products. Those all go in, are integrated seamlessly with your existing e-commerce data. So now everything really starts to make sense for your business, and presenting and understanding that information becomes exponentially easier for the customers that we work with. Now, some of you may be on the more technical side and saying, well, these are good from an aggregate level, but what do these data sets really look like? What are we really able to bring in? And we don't want to go too far into this, but we want to give you a sense as to how we structure these individual data points. The first is just that product name. That's what we're already capturing, what we're already reporting. And then you have that broad category that helps us to start building out those lists. But of course, we can also go then into individual subcategories, so additional data that you might bring in from a product. The price information obviously goes directly in. You have the different type information to say if you want to bring in how a product's made, its color, or other characteristics. And then that very last one, which is also pretty interesting, is the ability to bring in cost information. And cost information is contained within the back end, so it's never actually surfaced directly through an e-commerce order. Someone can't go through the page source and see what your costs are. But now you can use them in your analyses to begin to understand what profit is. So that instead of just looking at how much money is coming in and assuming all products are equally profitable, which we know they're not, now we can actually bring that information in on the back end of Google Analytics so that your reporting and your metrics reflect what that profitability is, and it makes reporting that much cleaner. Now, when all of these things come together, this is where you get the full analysis of what your products are actually doing. You can understand what are your most popular products, what products are the most frequently abandoned, which ones are converting the best, and again, at that product or list level. And now if you think about this, if you just take a step back and you think about these analyses and these data points, they almost seem intuitive to say, well, why shouldn't we already have these? For most advertisers, they're actually not using this type of information. They're just using this very high-level aggregate view. But once you can start to see some of the use cases and things that we can bring in, it becomes really clear how powerful this tool is, just in understanding how your existing products are performing. And of course, we're not even just going to stop there. We also have that other areas to say, well, what about those products that you're trying to cross-sell? Oftentimes you'll see internal promotions, recommendation engines, where you're trying to drive understanding to say what's actually happening with the things that we're trying to cross-sell. That's where the internal promotion capabilities come in. So whereas before we could track broad events to say somebody was clicking on a particular promotion or they were engaged with it, now we can bring in some of that same type of depth that you see from external marketing and that you see from individual products to the promotions. So if you're running a promotion, you can start to see, well, what was the click-through rate on that promotion? Were customers actually engaging with those recommended products or those recommended promotions we were surfacing for them? How many transactions were accounted from them? How many transactions were responsible from the individual clicks so that we can drive it all together? And we also have impression information in there as well, so you know how often you're surfacing these recommendations and these promotions to your customers. And that makes it easier. It's the classic McDonald's, would you like fries with that upsell? We can now quantify directly through this e-commerce feature. Now, the next area that we just want to talk about briefly is what are we able to drive when we go further through the business checkout process? So many of the new features that we just covered, we're focusing entirely on what we can understand about products and about how our customers behave. Well, can we start to understand a little bit more about what's happening as they're moving through the funnel and they're engaging with multiple products, multiple pages, and that checkout flow? Now, again, this is what's best contrasted when we look at the before and after. We've always had a checkout funnel product within Google Analytics. That one you see on the left, it almost looks congested now compared to what you see on the right-hand side, where you used to see people that are starting at one page and how they're filtering down to the next. We changed that view to be much more intuitive and much more robust. And what you can specifically see are the pages that people are starting on, and then how they're progressing all the way through the funnel, and at what stages they're abandoning, and at what stages they're actually converting. Now, this helps not only from just understanding your customers and those performance metrics, so how many people are you bringing in through your marketing campaigns that are eventually converting, but it also helps from the site optimization side, where if you want to focus and you say, well, people are getting through to the checkout flow, they're getting to the shopping cart, but they're not buying. What are we missing? And it gives you an area to understand that. And of course, what's great about this is that it isn't actually just a flat funnel. You can engage with this funnel and you can get different interactions and different proof points. So you can say, how does it differ based on the marketing campaign that they came through? How does it change based on maybe the location of the customers? Or more importantly, what happens when people are engaging with our business across multiple devices and categories? Now we allow that type of segmentation, that understanding, so that you can actually go through the checkout funnel to say, well, how does our site experience differ for those people that are using a mobile or tablet device based on those people that are using a desktop? And that's something that we spend a lot of time working with on advertisers, because the same optimization tips that you might take away to say this is the optimal desktop flow might not be the same for someone that's actually on a mobile device. And think about it from your own experience. How many times you're on a mobile device and people are asking you for all this information, credit cards and billing addresses, and do you want to opt into their subscriber lists? And you have to answer this all on a very tiny screen. This can understand what that impact is to your overall sales for people that might be interested adding something to a cart and then abandoning at the end. And it also helps you to start to quantify this individual performance so that when someone's coming to you and saying, well, how much are these site changes really worth to our business in incremental performance? These are the metrics that will get you there. Now, one of the last things I want to cover here is just the sales performance report. Whereas before we could view the individual transactions and say how much money came through, this is where we're going to start putting it all together. So we had those individual revenue amounts. Now we can actually get more and more accurate by looking at the individual taxes, the shipping amounts, and a feature that's been requested by many of our customers over the past several years has been the ability to put in and to calculate refunds. So that way, whether you're an e-commerce shop that's dealing with returns, or if you're dealing with some type of business, say in the travel vertical, where you often may have cancellations or changes, now you can account for those directly within the sales performance report so you get the most accurate figures, and you can also understand which campaigns and affiliate programs were driving actual value of people going through. So these are all the tools that we have. These are integrated directly within the feature. So we covered a lot about the granularity you can now get within individual products. We talked a lot about how you can improve the overall checkout flow. But one thing that we wanted to talk about, and I'm going to send this back to Michael for this section, is how we also close the loop. So there's a lot of areas that are happening within your business that extend beyond the website, right? There's things like offline sales. And we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how these new features and functionality come together to give you a holistic understanding of your business, even beyond just what's happening online.
Great. Thank you, Neil. So let's talk a little bit more about closing the loop. And when we talk about closing the loop, we have to consider different devices that consumers are using and different ways they are connecting with our brand and purchasing the products, or even learning about our products. Person might be on Google doing search, then coming to the website, learning about the product, maybe signing up for email updates, getting an email, opening that email on a mobile device, then deciding that they have a question, or maybe they want to consult support, making that phone call, and then after they had a satisfactory experience, going to actually in-store and completing the purchase. And that's just one out of millions of different consumer journeys that are taking place on a daily basis. And the question is, well, how do we tie that information together? How do we bring in data sets from all of these touch points into one system so we can analyze them? Really, all we want to do is make sure that when our data is telling a story, it is telling not just a compelling story, but it's telling a complete story. So here's an example when we are thinking about does digital drive in-store sales? And certainly we have different marketing channels, source medium, something that all of us have used inside the Google Analytics. But then what we are doing is we are tracking how many emails have been submitted as the result of our ad across that marketing channel. And then once a user submits an email and they enter it into our CRM, then we're able to see if they get mailers. Then if they actually visit the store, and then when they visit the store and then at the stage of the checkout and they complete the purchase inside the store, they give us maybe their email address so we can send them a copy of their receipt. Then we also send data into Google Analytics so we can tie in-store purchases and in-store revenue. to the original source medium that we have inside the Google Analytics. And now this data, again, it's telling a more compelling story. And this information helps us not just see if marketing does in fact impact in-store sales and revenue, but what marketing channels are driving in-store revenue and how much. So the next question is, well, where do I allocate my digital dollars? It becomes quite vivid. So let's take this a step further. Well, what if inside our CRM system we have information about our users? And what we want to do in this case is be able to see, right, not just what marketing channels are bringing users to the website, but what do those users do? And not just all of our users, not just all of our customers, but those customers that maybe have the highest lifetime value, because we can make an argument that this is the type of audience that we want to go after. This is the type of audience that is really the most important to our organization because they spend a lot more money on our products and services. And so here we can see we are integrating our CRM system with Google Analytics, and we can have user ID. We see page views, number of pages that user looked at on the website. Then we can see if that user completed the actual phone calls that originated after their on-site experience. Then if they've completed any phone orders, and then the amount of phone order revenue. And the last thing that we do is pulling data about this user from the CRM. We are putting their lifetime value. So again, we can then segment and understand what makes the group of users that spend the most money on our brand or that will spend the most money, what makes that segment unique and how we can remarket to that segment or how we can target that segment. So there's a great question that talks about that in-store when users complete or visitors complete a smaller purchase, they are not going to be most likely they're not going to be providing their email address. And the question is there something planned to link Google Maps and address data in people's smartphones? I'm not sure I can answer the question about the Google Maps project timeline. Neil, I'm not sure if you have any insights.
Unfortunately not.
So I guess not at this point, but that is a great question and definitely a candidate for our gift card. So thank you so much for posting it. Taking this a little bit further, so when we market our product services on Google AdWords, by natively integrating Google AdWords and Google Analytics, we are accustomed to high quality data where we can see impressions, we can see sessions, and we can see how much money we are spending across all of our campaigns and the revenue that we generate. But what if we don't advertise just on AdWords? What if we are an international company and advertise on search engines like Baidu, or when we advertise on tools like Outbrain or Facebook or even Bing? And the question is, how do we bring in that cost data into Google Analytics? And what you can do, we actually built a tool for that, just to automatically upload all cost data into Google Analytics. So again, the data can tell us a more accurate story. So now what we do is we look at all marketing channels and we can see not just how many visitors they brought, but we can see the cost, how much money we spent across each marketing channel. Then we bring in a metric that Neil alluded to at the beginning, cost of goods sold. And then they're bringing in also information about advertising overhead, because a lot of retailers advertise with search agencies and usually pay the percentage or some kind of flat fee. But how do we account for that information? So in this case, we are bringing an advertising overhead for each of those marketing channels. So then revenue and ROI becomes a lot more granular. And again, this information is now telling us a lot more accurate story, and it can tell us if we're actually losing money on by advertising on one of those channels. So if certain campaigns are actually losing money for us. So again, what we are trying to do by bringing additional data, in this case into Google Analytics, is to tell a more complete, more accurate story, because then the story will help us build insights and make the decision what to do next. And here is just another beautiful report, again, from Google Analytics, when we implement user ID tracking, and we are able to see for authenticated users what type of devices they use and how those devices work together to generate a sale or to generate a conversion. Throughout the presentation, we tried to showcase kind of here's what Google Analytics reports used to look like, and versus what the enhanced e-commerce Google Analytics report look like today. And I think it's important now, as we really saw so many compelling examples, is to really understand the role Google Analytics played before versus the role Google Analytics can play right now. So on the left side, we can see that before, Google Analytics was merely a tool that collected information about our online visitors. And along with tools like Salesforce or other CRMs, along with DoubleClick or email platforms like MailChimp, we would try to export all of that data, and most often manually export the data, and put the data either into Excel or data visualization platform Tableau, and then work with those platforms to create output, create reports for our stakeholders. So Google Analytics was merely a source of data. Now, let's move to the picture on the right. And in the picture on the right, we actually see what Google Analytics looks like today. And Google Analytics is actually taking a spot right in the middle, where we pull the data from different point of sale systems, from marketing channels, from email platforms into Google Analytics. And as I was showing in the previous example, we tied that data together to create the most compelling example of what analytics looks like and what to do with that information. And then based on that, we can create, we can automatically create many interesting reports, and most importantly, have valuable insights. So again, it's more of a transition that we are making from Google Analytics as a source of data to Google Analytics being really a platform that aggregates the data and helps us report across multitude of different interactions with our audience, with our consumers. So now, when hopefully we made a compelling case for what's new inside Google Analytics Enhanced E-commerce and some of the ways you can leverage reports, let's talk about implementation. And let's talk about answering some common objections. Because most often than not, even when you share this presentation or some of the slides or some of the know-hows with your teams, there will be some questions or some doubts about implementing this. And what we've tried to do is outline things that we can do or things that we can make to address those objections and how to think about the implementation. And these are just 4 questions that we can start with. But on a serious, slightly more serious note, usually the first objection to any type of implementation, whether it's Google Analytics, Enhanced E-commerce, or big data, or any type of implementation, it is what is going to be the ROI of this. And things that we often hear is, well, we already have enough data. And we have a homegrown solution that already does this or does something like this. Or another question that I personally like is, will analytics ever make money for my organization? It only seems like an expense. And one more, we do not see an incremental benefit. So you do not have to raise your hand since this is a webinar and I cannot see you, but do think about it if these are some of the questions that you've encountered in the past, and if these are some of the questions that maybe you struggled to address, or even if you are the person who is asking some of these questions. So what do we need to do to address some of these questions? Well, we like the concept of reframing, right? So instead of purely saying, well, we have enough data, well, how do we reframe that question? And the first one, it's not necessarily that you will have more data. In fact, the first step is not having data. The first step is figuring out how you can set up the reports and the information to make data more insightful and more readily available to you. And so the question is time. Right now, how long does it take you to get insights to support business decisions? And if you're thinking, well, it takes us a couple of days to put together reports, or first to pull data together, then we put together reports, then we start working on insights, and generally our reports are ready before the end of the month, or maybe the first week of the following months. Well, in the world where we live today, having a report that is 30 days maybe old, it's too long. And the question is, how can we make this report, so how can we use this new setup available to give us actionable information within minutes? Next one is use of data. So how is data currently being used? This is very important, right? So data is something that can help us accomplish something, sort of increase in ROI. It can help us drive more traffic. But the question is, does it help us identify opportunities? Through the slides that Neil shared, data was helping him identify what is the bottleneck inside the checkout process. It helped us identify what products maybe are not selling well and why that is the case. It helped us identify what promotions to use or not to use. And that's how we want to use data. It's the power to identify where to focus our attention. And one more is cost. How much does it cost to maintain an internal solution? If we think about having an internal data warehouse, an internal platform, maybe it's a wonderful system. However, what is the cost? How many full-time engineers does it take to have a solution that can give you the data that Google Analytics gives you, or other similar platform? And I know there have been a few questions. In just a few minutes, we will have more time where I will go through some of those questions. Again, please continue posting them. We have plenty of time to address them. The other set of challenges that we often hear has to do with, well, we do not have enough resources. What does it sound like? We already allocated our marketing dollars, or our IT team does not have capacity, or this is just very busy time of the year for us. The holidays are coming up. Let's revisit this the next fiscal year. And all of those are common, all of those are good objections. So the question is, how do we reframe this again? And what can we do to address them? One is really thinking about urgency. What can you do with new insights that are not available to you right now? And this is a very, very powerful question, because any type of implementation, any type of change has to empower a new set of activities or new set of insights that is not available to us before. And if we don't have that, if we retag our website or if we make any changes simply because we think it's better, that's not quantifiable enough, right? So when we talk about data, we need to use data to showcase the value of it. The other one is competitiveness, right? What is your competition doing? Is the competition also waiting until the next fiscal year to use the data to outperform what you are doing? And there are a number of tools that you can use to see what the competitors are using, what competitors are running. We actually have our own product, Tag Inspector, that we use, where we put together reports to identify what tools and what technologies Fortune 500 companies are using, or what tools and technologies are being predominantly used in Retailer 1000 list. So we can know what is being used across the border and specifically by the competitors. And lastly, if the question still comes down to, it's the question, we don't have resources, then it's not really, in my opinion, the question of resources. I think it is the question of ROI. and have we demonstrated enough value? Last set of objections that I want to talk to is implementation concerns us, right? So the questions that we often hear, sometimes from the IT team, not to pick them out, but sometimes how will this affect what we are doing? Will this break anything that we are doing? And first of all, if you already have to answer these types of questions, they are buying questions. So people are already considering doing this type of implementation. You just have to assure them that this will go smoothly. So how can we reframe these objections? The first one is MVP. And it has nothing to do with Tom Brady or most valuable player. It is more about what is the minimum enhancement that will deliver the most value. So MVP, minimum viable product, right? What is the minimum change that we can do to really demonstrate value to the organization and to demonstrate that we are on the right path? Next one is talking about process. And sometimes it's a simple question, well, who has done this before? How did they ensure data integrity, right? And we often, in this case, showcase dozens of case studies or examples, so sample project plans of how the process is built, how the methodology that we follow to make sure that everything is properly implemented. And lastly, the effort. How can we break this project down to deliver, again, incremental business value at each stage? And this is something that Avinash Kaushik talks about quite a bit, is do not spend the next 6 months trying to make your data perfect. It's the question is, what type of data set or report do you need to show business value? And once you start showing this business value, the organization is going to believe that this is the area where they need to spend, this is where they need to invest, and you're the person that needs to get a promotion. And lastly, in case someone does ask you, so good, we are sold, but technically speaking, how do we get started? And this section by itself is usually a full day training that we offer that talks about technical implementation. But to summarize this, we would suggest a 6-step process. One is deploying page view tags and enhanced e-commerce. And ideally, we would suggest doing it through a tag management system. Then event tracking and event architecture. Then setting up a product and cost data upload automation. So to bring in those product attributes that Neil was showing and sharing with us, so we can look at what product lists are performing well and what product lists are not. Then user ID and the CRM automation to get information about our users. Then thinking about the page taxonomy and how we can group sections of our website to see what sections are performing better than others. And the last one, which is often the more complex one, is offline and online integration. But again, keep in mind, when you're at the point of implementing step number 6, the whole organization most likely is already sold on the need of doing this, because the first 5 will give you enough data, will give you enough story, enough insights to convince everyone that you need to continue moving forward. So let me take you on a very short journey. So maybe you remember yourself Biology 101. And in Biology 101 class, we talked about the scientific method. And then we kind of, many of us who went into marketing, we forgot what the scientific method actually looked like. So today I want to bring this back. And the reason I want to bring this back is because I read this fascinating quote in Forbes magazine, and talks about focus is the distinctive trait of winning marketing functions. And the whole article was about that there's so many different shiny objects. There are so many different tools, technologies that we can invest in. And a lot of organizations are going almost after too much. And the point that was made in the article again is that focus is what differentiates winners from everyone else. So how is focus tied to this Biology 101 course? Well, because data can really help us focus our attention. So let's go through this process. First, when we look at high quality reports, it becomes easier for us to form an observation. Looking at the reports that Neil was sharing, that I was sharing, it's fairly easy to say, to form an observation and say, you know what, it seems like this marketing channel is underperforming because we can see that the revenue or the ROI is lower. What do we do then? Then we need to research this matter further. And we have enough data points, we have enough reports to begin researching this information. Once we've researched it and we can make a claim, we know this now for a fact that this campaign is underperforming. What do we do then? Well, then we structure a hypothesis. And as part of the hypothesis, we say, well, based on my data, if we are going to make this type of change to this campaign, our ROI or our sales or our time on site, whatever metric you're measuring, is going to increase. We structure this experiment using tools like Optimizely, or we send out a new set of emails. We get the data, we analyze this information again, and we are successful. So we share this information internally. And don't undermine step number 6, sharing. Sharing is what helps you get credit for what you do. Sharing is what helps you get budgets. Sharing is what helps you get buy-in from everyone else. Because now you share this across the organization, you say, data is what helped me focus our marketing efforts. Data is what saved us so much money. Data is what saved us so much time. So now I want to do it again. Who will say no to that? So again, think about the data as the way to focus your marketing efforts. And to just showcase again how this can be done and the importance of integrating platforms together, we put together this case study from one of the organizations that we worked with, an online auction house, where we integrated their email platform, we integrated their online bidding platform with Google Analytics. And within 90 days, you can see the increase in online bids, increase in bidding activity and bid value. It just went through the roof because the data became so appealing. It was easy to say, this is what needs to be done next. It was easy to structure an experiment, to structure a test, and to continue on this path. And last slide, I think, of this section is talking a little bit more about ongoing commitment. Really, just the advice is stick to this, right? The perfect setup, if you're looking at this thinking, well, I'm going to integrate this, I'm going to get this done, and we'll be good to go for the next year. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Perfect setup will degrade over time. Context changes, marketing changes, your website changes, everything changes, everything shifts. And what you need to do to trust your data on an ongoing basis is really have an ongoing process, take ownership of this data quality, and adopt and optimize. And now let me take some questions about some of the challenges. So I think the one question that we had about the CRM integration and maybe what CRM system to use. I'm a little bit biased in that sense because we use Salesforce, and majority of integrations that we do are between Salesforce CRM and Google Analytics. Now, Salesforce is not certainly the only one. There are many others that you can use. Our only suggestion is think about what solution is scalable and what solution will allow you to integrate with other platforms. You want to avoid having a siloed data set or siloed CRM where the only way to get data out is to download that into Excel sheet. The next question is, can you please give us more details on how LTV is calculated? Neil, do you want to take that one? I know lifetime customer value is one of your favorite topics. Not to put you on the line, of course.
Not at all. It is a topic I'm very passionate about. The lifetime value numbers that you saw earlier in the presentation were actually built with the assumption that they would be exported from an existing CRM system. And the reason for this is that many advertisers that we work with already have a lifetime value number that they are calculating someplace else, and we want to make sure that that methodology is consistent and that we have the tools and methods in place so that they can import that data as well as other data sets directly into the Google Analytics product. We did recently, I think it was back in March, announce one of the first LTV products within Google Analytics that actually starts to look on the mobile app side. Less of a future-looking LTV, which is traditionally what it is looking at future cash flows from a particular customer, and more towards calculating aggregate spend of those customers over 90 days. So combining multiple transactions and multiple purchases, which especially in the mobile segment can be especially powerful to see and be able to segment how much people are spending over their first 3 months with your business based on, for instance, the marketing channel that they came in through. For those of you on this webinar that maybe just be getting started with lifetime value and interested into how to calculate it, we actually make a lot of use out of a package that the Wharton School in Pennsylvania provides as open source. The package name is actually called BTYD, and we can post a link to it inside this webinar in a moment. It's an R package that you can download, and that just loads in simple transaction data, such as a customer ID, when did they buy a product, and how much was that overall transaction worth. And we'll aggregate that to start being able to provide you with an LTV metric that you can both import into Google Analytics as well as just use for your own separate analyses to look at who your more or less valuable customers are. But to the original question, there's no methodology directly inside Google Analytics apart from that 90-day aggregation. Most of it is built towards either individual CRM systems that calculate it or people that are using these standalone packages to be able to look and understand specifically the methodology behind it.
Excellent. Next question is all site data in Google Analytics Premium available to segment by device type? So absolutely, device type, you can segment your visitors by that information. In fact, it's not just unique to Google Analytics Premium. You can do the same type of segmentation analysis in Google Analytics, the standard version, and be able to see all the reports by device type. So visitors that come across different devices, how they convert, how they engage on your website. If you would like to see more screenshots about the specific question, please just email me and I'll be able to send again a few specific screenshots.
And one thing to add on to that, Michael, as well, is we went through the segmentation functionality fairly quickly, but one that I think is incredibly exciting, and I know a lot of people are putting to great use, is the fact that we're able to now to automatically bring in and segment based on demographic information. So Google Analytics has this unique capability of being tied into the larger Google Display Network, which infers for a lot of people on an aggregate level things like age and gender and what their other affinity and in-market categories are. You can actually segment this checkout funnel not only by device type, but also layering on information to say, well, how do people that are between 18 and 24 that are on a mobile device, or specifically an HTC or an Apple device, how is their behavior different? Or how about people that are also interested in these product categories? How are they going through the checkout funnel for something that might be entirely different? Those insights are automatically layered on without the need to go out and do additional survey research and tie those data sets together. You just have access to those. And just as Michael said, working both with not only the premium version, but it's available today for all the people that even have the free version of Google Analytics.
Thank you. The other question that was sent to me, how do we align our reporting across two web analytics platforms? So assuming that maybe it's an internal platform and Google Analytics platform, and maybe Google Analytics and Adobe Omnichannel. Great question. I was recently reading a book by Brian Clifton, his new book, and in fact, we have two webinars coming up with Brian. And one of the items that Brian talks about in his book is you don't. And to elaborate a little bit more about that, so the issue is having two systems that you rely on is that more often than not, you will not have two fully implemented analytical platforms. You will always rely on one more times than on the other one. And the question is, what is not available in one platform that you love so much in the other platform, and how you can make all features available within one platform. Uh, the reason I say do not spend a lot of time on getting both platforms to perfect setup is because data will never match 100%. It's just not possible. But you will spend a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to get to that point, and in the end, you will still most likely will be frustrated, and you will end up not trusting any of those platforms. So again, I think it's thinking about your business needs, business requirements, mapping them to what you need to have from the technical standpoint, selecting what platform has them, or after customization, what platform can have that available to you, and then sticking to that platform. And I know we are about at completion of our time. So there are a few more questions. There is our Twitter handle. There is also email address that I will share at the end that you can email me, and I'll be able to reply to additional questions individually. So just a few closing remarks. So in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all we have to say about that. So just thinking about a few additional items. One is, and I think I stressed that at the beginning, is data always needs to tell a story, right? A lot of times we think of data as big data warehouse, Excel sheets, complex reports, and that immediately scares us. Well, I would suggest thinking about data as a story that you are trying to tell somebody. And data is merely a proof that your story is actually non-fiction rather than fiction, right? Data will help you prove the point, but nevertheless, you need to tell a compelling story about marketing, about what happens on a website. Otherwise, people really do not respond well to just pure numbers. So turning numbers into insights and into story, that's something that will go a long way. And talking a little bit more about telling a story and how to get started telling the story inside your organization, we've put together a number of resources. This is a link to a landing page that has a number of free resources about enhanced e-commerce. It has how-to videos, e-commerce capabilities, sample reports, copies of our past webinars that you can download all for free and learn more about getting started, learn more about what's available inside enhanced e-commerce and how to implement it. And lastly, in the spirit of continuing learning, I would love to invite you to two webinars. This Brian Clifton, a best-selling author about web analytics, and we'll be doing again two programs with him about his new book, Successful Analytics, where first going to be about building analytics team, and the other one, believe it or not, is going to be called Storytelling with Web Analytics, where Brian will share his insights about how to tell data, how to tell stories with the data, and he will share a number of case studies from his work, from his experience of how companies have done this successfully. I would like to thank everyone for attending. I would like to thank Neil for participating and for sharing his insights. And again, if you have any additional questions, there is my email address, my website address. With any questions, please do not hesitate to email us or contact us. Thank you again.